dear friends in the Dhamma, it is indeed such a great pleasure and honor for me to be here in Nalanda Buddhist Society after 3 years. And I'm also so glad that I was able to come on the full moon day. And it's also a special full moon day. So we call it Māgha Pūja day. Right? So it is a very special day that we celebrate the gathering of the first large group of disciples of the Buddha. After Buddha attained enlightenment and he was sharing his Dhamma, and then started a community of disciples as the Sambuddha. One should become enlightened and you establish a community of disciples who can carry his teaching from generation to generation. So that's the difference between a Sambuddha and what we call the Pacceka Buddha. Sometimes people call silent Buddha. It's not, they are not silent actually. They are teaching but they don't establish a community of disciples. So the Sambuddha, who is our Gautama Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha, established a community of disciples and trained them who can then carry the teachings from generation to generation, and that is how we receive the teachings of the Buddha. So when we started establishing that community of disciples, and so within 10 months of his enlightenment, Buddha had a serious successful establishment of community, because within 10 months Buddha was able to ordain 1,250 disciples within 10 months. Initially, remember, when after Buddha became enlightened, he spent 7 weeks around the Bodhi tree, and then he was really concerned whether people will understand this truth, because what Buddha is going to teach is going against the stream. People like beautiful things. People are victims of the cravings and ignorance, and it's not easy. But I'm going to ask people, I'm not going to ask what they like to do, but I'm going to ask what is most fruitful and beneficial to them. So I'm not going to ask what they like to do. So because what we like normally is that we like superficial things, right? So Buddha was concerned about that, whether my teaching will be understood by the people, because this is going against the current, going against our habitual patterns of the mind. And then, of course, the Brahma Sahampati came to the Buddha and made a formal invitation to the Buddha to give the teaching, saying that there are people with little dust in the eye, and they will first realize it, and that will create this momentum, movement, and others will also realize it. And then we started to teach and establish the community. So when Buddha decided to first approach to all the ascetics, the group of people who already started seeking some explanation to the human suffering, who already started the journey but somehow couldn't find the solution, was misguided and maybe dropped along the way. And so he started first teaching the ascetics, the people who already renounced the world. So he first approached the 5 group, gave the first sermon, who actually did the ascetic Siddhartha, but who left after ascetic Siddhartha, stopped practicing extreme forms of asceticism. And Buddha approached them, and then he shared the teaching. And then, of course, to other group, then we have 30, a young group. And then they actually Buddha approached 3 brothers who were training many disciples. And so then we got their 500 followers, and then 300 followers and 200 followers, and there Buddha got 1,000 ascetics who then realized the Dhamma and became the disciples of the Buddha, and then later Venerable Sariputta and Moggallana and other monks came. Somehow within 10 months, Buddha was able to train, ordain 1,250 disciples. And this is the first group of disciples ordained directly by the Buddha, trained directly by the Buddha. So there was a gathering of all these disciples in the Veguvana, the first monastery. It's not really a monastery, it's a grove. Veguvana, a grove of bamboos offered to the Buddha by the king Bimbisara. So all these monks, without really informing, they all felt that they should be around the Buddha on this full moon day. It was a silent, automatic gathering of the first group of disciples with the Buddha. It was a special meeting, and it is the kind of establishment of the Buddha Sasana, the dispensation of the Buddhas. So that is why we celebrate on this full moon day the first gathering of the early group of disciples of the Buddha. And then we use this day as to get more inspiration for us to practice, and we honor. It's also a kind of completion of the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. Right? So the Buddha became enlightened on Vesak day and gave his first teachings on Asana or Asana Pūja in July. And of course then he ordained the first 5 months. Of course you already have the monks, but this is more like complete formation of a large group of disciples, so establishment of the triple J. So therefore we venerate the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha on this day. So I'm glad that today you spend your day in a wholesome day. You can go out and look at the moon tonight and say that, on that day when the special meeting was happening, the moon was shining. The same moon is there for us to watch today and get inspiration that we are part of that tradition, part of that lineage. So then those first group of monks and then share their teachings to other monks, nuns, and female upasakas and upasikas. And that tradition continued, and we are so lucky that after 2,560, even more than that actually, 66 is a Paliban, right? So more than 2,600 years later, we still have the teachings to us. And so whoever received these teachings before us have done a good job of preserving it and practicing it and passing it to the next generation. And now we have got it. And Buddha has given a special teaching in one sutta, in Madhyama Nikaya called Māgha Pūja. Buddha gave very important advice. Don't be the last generation of my dispensation. Don't be the last person of my my lineage. That's a great advice given by the Buddha. So I think our previous generations of disciples took that advice seriously, and they were not the last generation, and they somehow passed it to us. And now it is in our hands, and now we should benefit from it. We should, purify our heart. We should reduce our suffering and make our life more meaningful and peaceful. And then we have to make sure that we will not be the last generation, and we pass to the next generation. So be happy that you are here today. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the one important aspect of our spiritual path, of our practice. There are many ways we can look at this, the practice, the Dhamma practice. We can look at Dhamma practice in terms of a development, that we are growing and developing, cultivation. So that's one way we can look at the practice, because we are cultivating wisdom, we are cultivating wholesome qualities. But there's also another way that we can look at this practice in terms of purification, in terms of eradication, in terms of removing. What we are removing ignorance and then unwholesome defilements, kilesas in the mind. So it's like looking at the practice in two different vantage points, two different viewpoints. So one way it can be a bhavana, a cultivation, and the other way it can be visuddhi, purification, or eradication. So today I'm going to explain this path practice from the viewpoint of purification. What you are going to lose, not what you are going to get. What you are going to lose and what you are planning to get rid of. And then, of course, as a result, the wholesome qualities and wisdom will be there. But it's important for us to understand what we are going to get rid of. So, in fact, I think we are all familiar with that important verse from the Buddha that summarizes the whole teachings of the Buddha. We call it, avoid all bad actions, and then cultivate good actions, and then purify one's mind. And this is the teachings of all the Buddhas, right? Sattva pāpasa karana, avoid doing all evil deeds. Kusalasa upasampada, cultivate the wholesome deeds. And then the third one is the most important one. Sachitta pariyodapana. Sachitta, chitta means the mind. Sachitta means one's mind. Pariyodapana, purify. That's a Pali term. Visuddhi is a one term, and pariyodapana is washing, purify. So purifying one's mind, and this is the teachings of all the Buddhas, present, past, and future. So this summary, when you think about, so avoiding all the unwholesome deeds and cultivating the wholesome deeds and purifying one's heart. So when you deeply think about this, the third advice is the foundation for us to do the first two. Because don't do bad things, do good things. And this could be the common teaching for many religions and many philosophies, many spiritual traditions. Don't do the bad things and do the good things. But of course, what are the bad things and good things may be depending on how they are divided. But no matter how we ask people not to do bad things, do good things. But if you don't teach them how to train their mind, it is very difficult for people to do, right? Maybe people will not do bad things because we ask them to do, maybe because out of fear of punishments, they will restrain themselves. But tempt is more like a forceful. But whenever they get an opportunity, whenever they realize that there will be no punishment, they will do it. Right? So we can ask people not to do bad things, do good things. But if we don't give them tools to train their mind, it is very difficult for them to do it. So a very practical way of asking people to do good things and don't do bad things is to give them the tools to transform their mind and train their mind. Then they can actually, genuinely can stop doing bad things and good things. So that is the uniqueness of the Buddha's teaching, that the third aspect, purifying one's mind, that is the basis for us to not to do bad things and to do good things. So the whole Buddhist practice is aiming at this purification. So today we are going to be familiar with different stages of this purification. And Buddha has said that when we purify our life, we have to purify using the proper techniques. Because although we need to purify, if we don't use the proper technique, then we will not be able to purify ourselves. They may try, but we may not be able to purify. So, but they give an important example, how you can purify a piece of cloth using a proper technique. We can try to wash a cloth, purify a cloth, but if you don't use a proper technique in proper order, you may not be able to purify it completely. So Buddha asks how you purify a piece of cloth using a proper technique. Of course, if I ask now, you will see all names of the details. But at the time of the Buddha is saying that he's actually showing the proper technique to wash a piece of cloth. He said that using salt and cow dung. If you use salt and cow dung and proper human effort, and this is the way to properly purify a piece of cloth. This is how during that time people have washed their clothes. So we have to be happy. The cow dung was used to, cow dung and salt and the human effort. So then you can completely purify a dirty cloth. So Buddha said in the same way, you have used the proper techniques. So then Buddha has given these techniques. So when we explain the path, the spiritual path from the perspective of purification, and we find 7 stages of purification. And we find this, the first one, within the suttas, we find these 7 stages of purification. In a sutta called Ratha Vinira Sutta, in the Middle Land Discourses. That is the discourse that uses a simile of a relay of chariots. The relay of chariots. So that is where we find these 7 stages of purification, and then later we find in other places too. And then later within the Theravada tradition, in the 5th century, the very important book written in Sri Lanka, written by the most venerable Acharya Buddha Dosha, the great commentator. What we call it Visuddhi Māgha, the Path of Purification. That's the kind of textbook for meditators. And that book was written following these 7 stages of purification. So the first stage is called Sila Visuddhi. Visuddhi is a term for purification. Sila Visuddhi, that means purification of conduct, or purification of moral conduct. Sila. That is the first. So that because Buddha wanted to teach us how properly purify ourselves in a particular order. Because this has to be done in a proper order. Otherwise, the defilements will not be, clean. So starting from the moral conduct. But actually, that is how we start the practice. But before that, we all have the right understanding of what we are doing, what we are going to get rid of. So the practice starts from the sila, but the practice is based on basic understanding, not the full understanding. Basic understanding, or at least having the right orientation or perspective with the right vision. So what people samma ditti, or the right view, or can we call that the right vision, having a proper vision. We have to have that vision in order to start. So real hard work starts with sila, but before that we have to have a proper orientation and basic understanding of the Four Noble Truths. Because in the Four Noble Truths, we understand that the cause, or maybe the origin of our dissatisfaction and suffering is not something outside. Let's say our dissatisfaction, our suffering, or our pain, or our whatever problems, is the cause, maybe causes and conditions for the suffering is not entirely on the outside. Maybe other environmental and social situations we provide some supportive condition for our suffering to arise, but the main cause is within ourselves. And it is what we call tanha, craving, and many forms of craving. So first we need to understand that why I am doing this practice is to address this cause of suffering, which is the craving, which can be manifested in many ways. But then again, craving is based on avidya, the ignorance. So we understand the cause of suffering, which is the craving, and then understand that craving is based on a kind of blindness, or a basic misunderstanding that we have on the world. So in order to remove the craving, we need to remove ignorance. So this is like a multi-layered project. So that is why when we remove, we have to have a very gradual approach, because this is like layers and layers and layers. So the underlying, the real cause is the ignorance, avidya, the blindness that we all have to the real nature of how real things are happening, particularly how we experience the world. We experience the world, so we see the world outside, but we don't see the very process of how we experience the world. So we are always like watching a drama in the front seat, and then really being emotional about what is really happening, and either crying or laughing, and then really we are in the front seat seeing this drama, and we don't really see how this drama is made. So we are having that blindness, that avidya. So therefore we take things seriously, we can attach things, we can be hateful to things, because we don't see the constructed nature of the drama of existence. So that is the whole reason. So the reason that we develop craving is that we take these things seriously in a permanent way, as our own, as atta, as sukha, as niche, as permanent. So in order to get rid of the craving, we need to get rid of the ignorance, but that is so underneath deep, at the depth. So how can we address that? So therefore we have to have a very gradual approach. It's actually like doing a very difficult surgery. If you don't do it in a proper way, you will not be able to get rid of the root cause. You will still do some work, and the disease will be still there. So you really have to approach in that way. So therefore, what we really need is to get into the level of ignorance, but it is so underneath. And our normal mind, the normal function of the mind, is not capable of seeing it and getting it. So how we can train our mind to see it? Right now we can talk about it because Buddha has already taught it. The enlightened ones has taught us, and thus therefore we can just talk about it and at least have a right view. But if there was no Buddha, we will never even think about it. We will always be in the front seat in the drama and taking seriously and as permanent and as satisfying. Because the Buddha has taught us this is the constructed thing, and now we can talk about it. But how, and the place that we are right now, we can't see that ignorance, we can't see that craving directly from where we are in now. So therefore, it's almost like we are sitting somewhere, and we have something in front of us, it is blocking the reality. And in order for us to see that, we need to move a little bit. And you can't see it from where we are sitting right now, because we are now full of, under the influence of these defilements and ignorance. So no matter how we are here, how much we try, or how much we want to understand the Dhamma, if we don't change your position, you will not be able to understand the Dhamma. Sometimes people want to understand the Dhamma, just reading and reading and reading, want to make sense, understand, without changing anything in them. So if we can fully comprehend the Dhamma from where we are in right now, well, they haven't really taught us a very special thing. Anybody will be able to say it. We need to move ourselves from where we are now to really see what Buddha has taught. Otherwise, we're not able to see. So, for example, we can talk about ignorance, we can talk about craving because we have the teachings, but we will not be able to experience and see it unless we move ourselves from where we are. So therefore, these 7 stages of purification is given to us. Okay, now first we have a right view. Because of the teachings of the enlightened one, we know the story, but we can't experience it yet. We know this story, we know the real situation from knowledge, from like we call Sutta Jnana, through reading the Sutta, having a right view. But we don't really see it in that way. So in order to do that, now we need to change, we need to move, we need to, maybe uplift ourselves from where we are. Then we will be able to see it. So the process of uplifting ourselves is these 7 stages. So start with, so having that right understanding, so our goal is to see the craving and then see the ignorance that is feeding the craving and getting rid of that. That is the goal. But I can't do it the way, with this qualification, with this ability. Now I need to move myself to the place that I can see it. So then with the right view, and now we start with sila. We start with moral conduct. Because the normal mind that we are having right now is so wavering, so moving, so confused. It is not the good tool to address the craving, to see this ignorance. It needs to be trained, it needs to be refined, it needs to be purified in order to see. So in order to purify the mind, you need to purify something else. That is our moral conduct. So we start with moral conduct precepts. So we purposely observe certain principles and then we try to change our behavior following these precepts as a step to really look into our mind and train our mind. So our real goal is to develop this wisdom, get rid of the ignorance. In order to do that, we need to have a sharpened, focused mind. In order to have a sharpened, focused mind, we need to have a moral, disciplined conduct. So this is how they are connected. So we start with some discipline in our behavior. So sila, because then only we get the ability to really calm our mind, to look into our mind. And only calm and concentrated mind will be able to see this real mechanism of the suffering and what is still going on. So that is how this gradual path is being laid out by the Buddha. So we start with sila. And then there are many aspects to this sila. Of course, as lay people, you follow the 5 precepts. And the following 5 precepts is simply making your life simple and making your life worry-free. So we use this term like, we protect the precepts, we follow the precepts, but actually precepts protect us. We don't really, so the precepts are given in a way that when you follow these precepts, it makes your life danger-free, worry-free, and quite simple. And then you have time, you have enough freedom to look into your mind and calm your mind. Otherwise, if you are doing, let's say, for example, basic precepts are the 5 precepts. And if you go around and cheat other people, if you go around and steal other people's things, if you go around and disturb other people's married lives. And if you have such a life, and you open yourself to so many troubles and problems and issues, and because you are going to get repercussions, your life is going to be so complicated. If you tell one lie, and you have to tell so many other lies to hide that lie, and you have to remember all the lies that you have told others, and so complicated. So when you follow these precepts, our life becomes so simple, so straightforward, and we protect ourselves from all the troubles and problems that may come to our life. So such a moral conduct gives us enough space in our mind, enough opportunity for us to really sit down and then be calm and settle our mind. Otherwise, when you sit down to meditation, you will have so many issues that come into you, and you will never be able to focus your mind. And this is what I have to teach to many Americans, because they come to Buddhism or the Buddhist center mainly to meditate. So they have heard about meditation. Even some doctors recommend them about meditation. They created this unrealistic view about meditation. Mindfulness and meditation is going to solve all your problems. And so they don't want to meditate. They want to come and learn meditation techniques. But if you have to teach them, okay, it's great that you like to meditate, but this is the issue. You can come and sit down. You can try to shut down your mind, shut down all the thoughts, but that's not going to happen. And you have to make a change in your lifestyle in order to have a really effective meditation. So meditation is not like something like zoning out, having nice space, and you somehow shut off your mind and have a really good time, and then go back and continue to do all the things that you used to do. So it's not working like that. So we have to teach them, if you really want to meditate, learn these precepts, and they are not really to restrict your freedom. It's actually they are to enhance your freedom. You are going to be free from a lot of troubles when you follow these precepts, and you are going to experience a lot of freedom and peace when you follow these precepts, because you are closing the doors to so many troubles and problems by observing these precepts. So the whole purpose of following precepts is to prepare a lifestyle that will support the calming of the mind. So when we follow our precepts in an untorn manner, completely following the precepts, we call it untorn, unspotted, and then conducive to samadhi. When our sila is perfect, we call it samadhi samvattanika, conducive to samadhi. And other than the 5 precepts, of course, as monks we have Patimokkha precepts, and as you have 5 precepts, and on opposite the days you observe other precepts, 2 and 8 precepts. So that is one aspect of the precepts. But actually, in order to have a really conducive sila to have samadhi, we need to pay attention to a few other sila too. So precept, sila by following precepts is only one aspect of sila. There are 4 aspects of sila. One is following precepts. There's the other one is called Ajiva Parisuddha Sila, which means doing our livelihood is actually part of the right livelihood. Doing our livelihood in a moral and then in a righteous way. So it's not only the following 5 precepts, but also making sure that you choose a profession that will not harm society or animals, but actually will benefit. And then doing our livelihood. With regard to monks, it is basically living not to use all kinds of cunning ways to get the prerequisites. But for lay people, it is following the right livelihood and doing a profession that is not against our spiritual values and also not harming the people, the animals, and the environment. So we have to make sure that either we choose a good right livelihood, or we perform our livelihood in a righteous way. Sometimes we will not be able to have many choices, but we have to make sure that we choose the right livelihood. In long run, it's going to be beneficial to us. It's not necessarily status or even the income, but actually the satisfaction that livelihood can give us is important. And the other aspect is actually called Pratya Sannisita Sila. That is actually consuming our basic needs with wise reflection. And particularly for monks, when we consume robes, food, and lodging and medicine, we have to reflect before we eat. Monks recite and reflect in an appropriate way. It is also common for lay people also. When you consume your clothes, when you consume anything, and do it with wise reflection, and try to do it. Do I really need it? When you want to buy another pair of shoes, you can ask, do I really need it? How many shoes I have in my shoe rack? Do I really need it, or is it? Or sometimes, and you can do. Maybe you may need it, because now you have different needs. So, using our basic needs with wise reflection, and that is also a part of the sila. Because the sila is not only avoiding doing things, but also doing things properly too. So we have two sides to the sila. One is varita, which is in avoiding. Other one is charita, which is doing the proper custom. So this conceiving the basic needs with wise reflection is charita, doing in the proper way. The last one is the little difficult one. The last aspect we call is Indriya Samvara Sila, which is the guarding of our sense doors. Guarding our sense doors. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, skin, and the mind as a sensory organ. So this requires very strong mindfulness. Guarding the sense doors means that because we will develop our defilements based on what we see, what we hear, what we taste, what we smell. So any development of defilements will happen in the mind, starting from what we see, what we hear, what we smell. So either even like jealousy can arise in our mind as a result of seeing something, or as a result of hearing something someone has actually, right? So in the same way, arrogance, when we conceive, can arise in us seeing maybe our own certificate, for example. And then lust can arise in us as a result of seeing something, maybe hearing, maybe touching. Anger can arise in us as a result of seeing or hearing. So all these defilements arise in our mind, started from our sensory doors. So the one aspect of the sila is actually try to guard these sensory doors. We may not be able to successful all the time, but we have to maintain this guarding of the sensory doors, always being mindful of what we see, hear, and smell, and making sure that what we hear, see, and smell, taste will not be a beginning point of a series of defilements that's going to arise in our mind. So that's the difficult sila to follow. But meditation becomes successful only if we have at least some level of this sila, guarding of the senses. Because if we start like indulge whatever we see and keep fantasizing, you see a billboard, and then you see something now. Okay, now you are still driving, you pass the billboard, but you start to fantasize, start working. When I go to that restaurant, how I'm going to eat that, or maybe you see whatever you see in the billboard, you see it and then you indulge in that, defilements for, maybe how many minutes, sometimes hours. So then we have fed that patterns of defilements. So it's difficult, very difficult when you sit down, not to have those patterns repeating in our mind. So in order to make, to have a purity of our conduct in a way that it will support our samadhi, we have to pay attention to all these 4 aspects of the sila. Following precepts, having a right livelihood, and then conceiving our basic needs with wise reflection, and then guarding our sense doors. So these 4 aspects is called complete sila. So we need to achieve the purity in this conduct. That is the first stage of purification. So that is how we start. We will not be able to complete at first, but to the extent that we have purified our conduct, our sila, to that extent we will be able to develop our stillness, calmness, clarity in the mind. And to the extent that we have calm and considerate mind, we will be able to see through the real mechanism of fundamental truths. So, but first, so started from the sila. So once we have such a practice, then our mind is now has less issues to handle. So whenever we sit down, it will be easy for us to focus our mind on the meditation object, or maybe maintain our mind in loving kindness, or the virtues of the Buddha. So the meditation becomes so successful, effective, because our surrounding, our preparation, we have less issues to handle, and we haven't indulged in fantasies very much. Therefore, when we sit down, our mind has less tendency to go into fantasizing and go into proliferation. So then we have support from the sila, and then we can now start to meditate and focusing on a wholesome object or a neutral object, such as prayer, or a wholesome object like loving kindness and virtues of the Buddha. Now we can calm our mind, settle our mind. And so as a result, we will be able to remove our mind, at least temporarily, from 5 hindrances, what we call from the sensual lust, and from ill will, from sloth and torpor, from remorse, ill will, remorse and restlessness, and then temporarily from the vicipicca, uncertainty, skeptical doubt. So that will require some practice, and then those 5 hindrances are the ones that cloud our mind. Those 5 hindrances also make our mind not sharp. What is the opposite of sharp? Blunt, right? Yeah. So that those 5 hindrances make our mind blunt. So we can't cut through, we can't see through. So, but developing this meditation by focusing on a wholesome or neutral object, and then gradually we will be able to remove these hindrances, but not permanently. Because now we are going to the root yet. We haven't really uprooted the whole thing, but in order to see the root, we need to temporarily remove these things. So the hindrances are subdued in meditation. The second stage is called Chitta Visuddhi, which is the purification of the mind, which means developing samadhi, calming the mind, or temporarily subduing hindrances. Temporary means sometimes it can last long, but not uprooting, but subduing the 5 hindrances through focusing on our mind on the wholesome or neutral object and calming the mental activities. So that is called Chitta Visuddhi. And then once we are able to calm our mind to the point that it's so subtle, so still, and there's no any wanting or liking to indulge in the senses, because the samadhi state, we come to a point that we are fully satisfied in that state. We don't want to see or listen or taste anything to be happy. So in that state of samadhi, we realize that being free from this sensual excitement is the happiness. And you come to that point that, okay, this is so peaceful, so serene, I don't want any excitement, I don't want any indulgence. So you come to that point, and that is the kind of complete, then our mind will be free from all the five hindrances. But it has to have enough energy also, not like salt and torpor, but enough energy, so it has to be balanced. And so then in that state, in that calm state, then our mind is now sharp enough. We have moved ourselves away from where we were. Now if you turn your attention, now we have ability to see the real coverings, the real causes of suffering. And now we can see, have some glimpses to the defilements arising, and then also the blindness that we are having. So then we are moving to the prajna section, panya, wisdom section. So we have sila, and then samadhi, and then last stage called panya. But in the scheme of 7 purification, the sila visuddhi and chitta visuddhi stand for development of samadhi. You purify your mind. And then the panya section, wisdom part, is divided into 5. Because the development of panya, if you look at from the perspective of purification, the development of prajna is done through purifying 5 layers of what you call 5 layers of coverings, 5 layers of veils. So, but all other 5 are what? Development of panya. So the third purification is called the purification of views, ditti visuddhi. Purification of views, ditti visuddhi. There actually, the explanation is that actually you now you can penetrate to the mutual working of nama and rupa. And you see how the mentality and materiality is working together. And from the normal mind, we can't see it. We either see, we can observe our body, we can observe our mind, but we will not be able to clearly see how in our every movement, every action that we are doing, even like moving my hand like this, there's a mutual mechanism of my mentality and my materiality. I have the intention to move, so and then my materiality follow my mentality, and then I move. So usually when we live our life, we don't really notice it. But in that deeper level of samadhi, we're able to distinguish how the mentality and materiality working interdependently. So there's no separate independent mind or mentality. There's also no independent separate body or materiality. They are interdependently working, relying on each other. So we will have a penetration to that nama and rupa. That will also remove our misunderstanding of this identity view, what we call sakkaya ditthi, which means that you believe that this 5 aggregates, or this body of the 5 aggregates has an owner behind it, what we call I. So you're able to get rid of that view. Then this nama and rupa, you can, maybe in detail, you can explain as 5 aggregates. So usually how we feel that, these bodily functions, and we have feelings, we have perception, we have sensations and all these things. But somehow we feel that other than these whole processes happening, there's an agent or an owner that this whole process is behind, like a ghost. So So that's how we see, that's how we feel. For everyone, from where we are right now. No matter how much we read, no matter how much others teach us, the way we feel is that these aggregates are working, but there's a special owner. Someone who someone who is behind all these aggregates, and that is I and me. That is how we feel it. But when we when we have this purification of the conduct, and then based on that having purification of mind, which is developed in this deep samadhi, then you will be able to remove all the 5 hindrances. That kind of mind can see how this nama and rupa working dependent on each other, and they are all interdependent, and there's no any one behind this whole process to continue to own this whole thing. So you can get rid of the sakkaya ditthi, the first sanyoja, the first fetter. So that is ditthi visuddhi, purification of the view. And then we move to the next one, next visuddhi, we call it Kanka Vitarana Visuddhi. So these visuddhis are law, the names are quite long. Kanka Vitarana Visuddhi. That is the purification by removing the doubt. Kanka is another term for doubt. We know that in 5 hindrances we have vichikicca, right? It says doubt, and we can also call it uncertainty. Uncertainty, perplexity, perplexed, being perplexed, right? So uncertainty. So the next purification is related to the first purification, and then we will be able to understand the dependent origination. How causes and conditions, whole principle of conditionality. The conditionality. If anything to arise in this world, it has to be supported by causes and conditions. So if anything is existing, it's not really existing by itself, it's simply relying on so many other causes and conditions. So if any person, we can talk about a person, we can talk about any phenomena, but they don't really exist as we say it. They simply appear there because of those causes and conditions are right there for that phenomenon to appear. So you develop this deep understanding of conditionality, and then you understood that if anything to exist, that means presence of so many causes and conditions. So there's no real existence in that sense. And we simply rely on each other. No real existence there. So you develop this deep understanding, therefore you remove your all perplexities and your uncertainties. And then it becomes so clear that if anyone or anything to exist means not really that permanent or individual independent existence, is simply this interdependence. So in that sense, nothing really exists the way they appear. So that realization will remove all the doubts, all the uncertainties, and that's the again part of the panya. And also remember the first stage of enlightenment, it's sotapatti, is the removal of sakkaya and vicikicca, and also the attachment to our practices, like being dogmatic about one's practices. So this is related to that. So we are again developing of the panya, but this time you are removing the doubts. The next purification is called Māgha Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. Māgha Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. That means purification by knowing what is the proper path and improper path. Magga is path, and Amagga is wrong path. So purification by knowing Actually, it's not really knowing, it's called dassana, means experiencing, directly experiencing what is the path, proper path and improper path. But actually, in this stage, you are not really talking about the path, means which path to follow. This is actually deeply understanding the possible danger of samadhi. Because in deep meditative states, you experience such peaceful, such undisturbed states. Many people, even before the Buddha, sometimes achieve higher level of samadhi and peace, and they mistook those peaceful states to be the final liberation. So when you come to that stage, and we have to have a proper understanding, we have to purify ourselves, not mistaking having maybe piti or passaddhi, like joy and tranquility, as the final destination, because those states can feel that peaceful, that free from defilements. Because temporarily you have subdued those hindrances, and you can feel that. So we have this term called vipassana upakkilesa. Like, the kind of, defilements that we experience only in the deeper levels of meditation. So even, for example, when you develop jhana, we experience this, let's say, like spiritual joy, serenity, tranquility, and even equanimity. When you experience equanimity, you feel like this is all. So sometimes we can mistake these states as the final liberation. So at this stage, what we mean by the purification, by knowing the proper and improper path, means not to be fooled by these peaceful states, and then really understand that they are also constructed or maybe produced state. Because we can experience this deep peace, equanimity, joy, serenity, but those things are developed through these practices that we talked about. So they are actually causally produced states. They feel peaceful, but then the knowledge to understand that even these are peaceful, they are sankata states, means causally produced state, not asankata, not the nibbana. So purifying our understanding at that level, not to be fooled by this super peaceful states, is called this visuddhi. So that is like higher level of visuddhi. And the next one, the sixth one, is patipada jnana dassana visuddhi. That means purification by knowing the patipada, the practice. Let me see what is the English translation. Purification by knowledge and vision to the course of practice. That means, so patipada, actually here, it's not only knowledge of patipada, but actually directly experiencing the patipada, directly experiencing the path. So in that state, let me move to the next one. You get the complete understanding of the dependent origination, and so we call it actually the knowledge of arising and passing away. So in patipada jnana dassana visuddhi, the sixth stage of purification, you develop your penetration to see arising and passing away of all phenomena. Though all these purifications are related, because they all panya, but slight, different variation, different stages of panya. So arising and passing away of any phenomena. So because usually when we talk about phenomena, we can talk about anything in terms of the nouns, but actually if you deeply develop your realization at this level, according to the enlightened one's experience, so that we don't know that if anything is not really existing at any given point of time, if anything is there, either it is arising or it is passing away. Nothing exists. Either it is in the state of arising or in the state of passing away. I mean, simple example would be flower. Right? So you have this flower. We can say there is a flower here. In the conventional knowledge, we can say there is a flower. We can say flower exists. We can see. But in reality, either this flower is blooming or it is withering. There's no moment, there's no single moment that flower exists in a real sense. Either it is blooming or it is withering. So any phenomenon is either in the process of arising or in the process of decay. In between, we can project an existence of anything, but reality is either in the process of arising or in the passing away. So when it comes to us, either we are growing, how to say? Oh yeah, either we are growing up or growing old. So we are growing, right? Yeah. So there is no moment that we exist even for a moment. Either we are growing up or growing old. So anyway, so this is like a simple example, but in that deeper level of samadhi, you know, say right now we talk about it, we conceptually understand it. We are not really seeing it. Here actually the term is jnana dassana. Means like knowledge through seeing it. Dassana means seeing it. So in this samadhi state, you can direct your mind and then you can directly see how any phenomena is arising and passing. You can directly experience it. So purifying our purification by the knowledge and direct vision or direct experience of this arising and passing away. That's the sixth purification. So there you actually penetrate to the ignorance. By having this direct experience of arising and passing away, you get rid of the ignorance, you get rid of the blindness that we have. We usually see things existing. Existence is something we see. Either things exist or not exist. So that's how we see. So that is the ignorance. But in this direct experience, you penetrate to the ignorance and you are removing the ignorance. The last stage of purification is called jnana dassana visuddhi. Now you are left with jnana dassana. That is purification by knowledge and vision, or purification by knowing to see, directly seeing. The earlier you see the arising and passing away, but at this stage you are actually moving away from the first stage of enlightenment to the other stages of enlightenment. And directly seeing and directly penetrate into the ignorance, and now you are experiencing the Phala, Māgha and Phala, moving to the second stage of enlightenment, third stage of enlightenment, and the final stage of enlightenment. So the three other stages of enlightenment is covered in the last Visuddhi, Jnana Dassana Visuddhi. Now you have direct penetration to the ignorance, and you are achieving or experiencing the other stages of enlightenment. But actually, after this seven purification, the result of the seven purification is actually called Anupada Nibbana, the complete enlightenment. Because this in the discussion of the seven stages of enlightenment, Venerable Sariputta is questioning Venerable Punna. This is a very interesting conversation because group of monks visited the Buddha, and the Buddha asked about, who are the monks that you appreciate, and who are the monks who will help you to encourage you to do this practice. So they talked about, we know this monk called Punna. He was also the son of the mother called Mantani Buddha, and he's always encouraging us, inspiring us. And when these disciples report about this Venerable Punna to the Buddha, Venerable Sariputta, the chief disciple, heard about this monk. And Venerable Sariputta, he's the chief disciple of the Buddha, but he was so happy to hear about this, these monks talking about goodness and encouragement of another monk. And he thought, I should really see this monk. So, and then of course, few days later, Venerable Sariputta came to know that Venerable Punna has arrived in Savatthi. And so then Venerable Sariputta went, and then he saw Venerable Punna was having a discussion with the Buddha. And after that discussion, Venerable Punna decided to go to a grove to have his rest. So Venerable Sariputta took his bowl and rod and following him. It says that he was following him, making sure that his vision is not lost. So following behind him and keeping enough distance that he can see where he's going. So, Venerable Sariputta, being a chief disciple, it doesn't have go around and follow these other monks, but he was so appreciative of this monk because other monks talked about him. He really wanted to meet him. The Venerable this Punna, he lived in a different city. He hasn't been in the Savatthi, so he hasn't met Venerable Sariputta yet. So Venerable Sariputta followed him, and when he entered that grove, he also entered that grove. And then Venerable Sariputta went there, and they have been exchanged greetings. And then Venerable Sariputta asked series of questions, following his 7 stages of purification. He asked, under whom are you following this holy life? As if like a newcomer is asking a question. Venerable Punna said, I'm living this holy life under the guidance of the Gautama the Buddha. Actually, he called recluse Gautama. And then he asked the question, are you following this practice for the sake of purification of sila, purification of conduct? He said, no, I'm not following this practice, this holy life for the sake of purification of sila. Then he asked, are you following this for the sake of purification of chitta, purification of mind? He said, no, I'm not following this for that sake. And then he continued to ask all these 7 things, are you following this for the sake of purification of the view? He said, no. And after asked all 7 questions, he said, no. Then he asked, and for what sake you are following this holy life? And he said that I'm following this holy life for the sake of attaining unbinding state, anupadani bhava. The unbinding state, like unconditioned state, unbinding state, that means the full enlightenment. And then he asked again, so in that case, all these purification I mentioned is not related to this attainment? He said, no, they are all related. But I'm not living my whole life just for the purification of sila. I'm not living this whole life just for the purification of mind. I'm not living this whole life just for the purification of will. I'm living this whole life for attainment of this unbinding state, but all other 7 purifications are prerequisites or related to this final attainment. So I'm following all this purification, but not for their own sake, but for the attainment of unbinding state. So just like I told you earlier, the goal is to remove this ignorance, but it's so underneath. In order to do that, we need to have other purification. So then he gave a simile of relay of chariots. He gave a simile to Venerable Sariputta because he doesn't know that this is Venerable Sariputta. Let me give you a simile. He said that a king, the king Pasena comes from Savatthi, he want to make a journey to Saketa, another city. So when he want to make that journey to Saketa, he will not use only one chariot, because there are different stages in this journey, different kinds of roads. So he will come from his inner chamber to outside gate from one chariot, and then he will make another journey from that place to outer city from another chariot. So in that way, he's using like 7 chariots to go to the Saketa city, because once you reach the city Saketa, he will move to another small chariot and he go there. So he said that when he really go to see his friends and relatives, if they ask, did you come from the last chariot that you came? And he say, yes, it's not the correct answer. Right? Of course, once got him the last stage of that journey is the last chariot that he came. But in order for him to get into that chariot, he came from a previous chariot. And in order for him to get into that chariot, he travel through other previous chariots. In that way, you have to go all the way to 7 chariots. So in the same way, Venerable explained to Venerable Sariputta, the Jnana Darsana Visuddhi, the last purification is like direct experiencing of the direct penetration of ignorance, and directly seeing it for one's own experience is the last purification that resulted in experience of the unconditioned, unbinding, experience of Nibbana. But in order to get that, I have to purify the previous one. In order to have that purification, I have to purify the initial one. So in that way, all the way to the Sila purification. So therefore, it is actually Sila, Samadhi, Panya. But it is explained in terms of 7, and particularly dividing Panya into 5 subsections, more in details. So that is the stages of purification. So when we look at our spiritual practice in that perspective, what we are really doing is actually we are getting rid of so many things, getting rid of layers and layers and layers of impurities. And in another discourse, Buddha talked about how if someone wants to purify gold, he has to first get rid of the gross dirt in the gold, gross one. And then once you remove the gross one, and then he has to get rid of the what we call medium level. What is in between gross and subtle? Intermediate. So the gross level of impurities, which means actually physical behavior, like bad conduct, and then you have to get rid of the medium level, the intermediate level of dirt, and then you have to get rid of the subtle level of dirt, and ultimately you also have to get rid of the dust of the gold. And then only can have a real pure gold. So in the same way, so there are different levels of purification that we need to achieve. So you have to start with Sila. To the extent that our Sila is purified, you'll be able to calm our mind. So don't complain that my meditation is not good, because it is not good, because you have to purify your Sila more. Of course, you have to practice correct techniques too. You have to get proper guidance from a teacher to follow correct techniques. But our meditation is not effective if we haven't purified our moral conduct. And when our meditation is effective, we really can subdue our hindrances, and then we'll be able to see reality, see things clearly in more deeper and deeper sense, and we will see how craving is arising, how craving arises in this basic misunderstanding that things exist as we see them or as we experience them. That is why we develop craving. Whenever I see things, I think that that thing is really existing as I see it. It's beautiful, I want it. But in reality, whatever I see is not really existing as I see it. You know, the real mechanism is something else. When you really realize that there's nothing there for me to attach to, you automatically remove your attachment. So your effort is not really to get rid of the attachment, you really want to get rid of the misunderstanding that there's no such things in the first place, but you have to experience it. In order to experience it, you have to temporarily have these different levels of purification. So let us start with stila, and then let us continue our meditation practice. And the more purified we are in our moral conduct, more purity we will have in our mind, and then more purified our mind, we will be able to directly experience the real mechanism, real drama happening in our life. We will be able to directly experience it, and once we directly see it, we will be able to penetrate our ignorance, our blindness, our misunderstanding, and that will remove all impurities in our mind. So we will be completely purified. So I wish we all continue to work in this path towards the full purification of Nibbana.